following announcement has been paid for by the WZWA Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Insider's Edge podcast here on the WZWA Network. I'm your host with the most on the West Coast, Karlifornia and Fury. It's a joy to be with you all once again. And speaking of a joy, right here, right now, I get to speak to a Deathmatch Hall of Famer right here. I have the honor of introducing my guest. He is former CZW Iron Man and Tag Team Champion, and of course, former King of the Deathmatch. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mr. Insanity, the one and only Toby Klein. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good.
That's good, my friend. Thank you for taking the time to be on the show with me here today. And Toby, the first question usually I give everyone on the show here is, when you were a young man, before you got in the business, how did you become a fan of professional wrestling?
Well, I grew up, I'll show my age a little here. Yeah, I just turned 44 this past summer. I started watching wrestling probably by the time I was 5 years old. And the very first wrestling match I ever attended in person was Jesse the Body Ventura versus Hulk Hogan. And so after I seen Hulk Hogan, I became a Hulkamaniac.
Awesome. It seems to be quite prevalent with a lot of people that it's always Hogan that's the one that got them. The bug bites you at a young age there, and that's quite some time ago, Toby. So at some point in time, you must have come across a more harder style of wrestling, deathmatch or hardcore wrestling. When was the first time that style of wrestling came into your life?
Well, early on, I attended I guess it was an independent show. It was, I believe, Bruiser Brody versus Tito Santana. And Bruiser Brody just beat him all over the building. And I really fell for the Bruiser Brody style. I thought he had a cool gimmick and just how he just did more of a hardcore style, and I really liked seeing him. So Bruiser Brody was my first hardcore influence.
Right, that's really cool. That's because a lot of the guys that I have in the show, they'll say something like, "Oh, they saw ECW, or maybe somebody saw, some stuff from Japan and all that." So that's really interesting because Brody was kind of a really early influence for that style of wrestling. That kind of became a little bit more popular in the 90s. So as you grow up and become more of a, you're a young man, when do you decide to yourself, you got to figure out a way to get into the wrestling business? And how did you go about getting trained by Kid Collins?
You did your homework. Kid Collins?
I do.
He was an extra for WWF through the 80s as Mike Collins was the name they usually had him work under. But yeah, he was based out of, at the time, Shelby, Ohio, a gym, and that was my hometown. And I had come home from college one weekend, and I was only at college for maybe 2 months, and I was going to the University of Toledo, and I had come home on the weekend back to Shelby, and I walked through the middle of town, and I looked in the window, and there's a wrestling ring being put together. They had just moved to Shelby. And so I went in and asked them, boxing, wrestling, what are you guys doing here? And they said wrestling. And they said there'll be free tryouts for you. And so I tried out, and I quit college the next week and moved back home. And my wrestling career was off and running. Actually, not off and running. I'd say after about 5 or 6 months of training, I just wasn't catching on. And he was actually a referee. He looked at me and he said, if you're wasting our time or you're wasting your own time, just get out of here. If you're not going to take this seriously. And so when the referee told me that, it like changed from that point on. I started taking it much more serious, and it seemed like I learned fairly quickly after that happened. So I would say by the 9-month mark, I had a match. 9 months after I started training.
Right, that's really interesting. I like that. Cool. And my research tells me, and it could be wrong because sometimes the internet's incorrect, but you debuted in 1997 or 1998?
February of 1997 against Bodacious.
Right, and I always love to ask people, how did the first one go?
It went good. I bought some red hair dye to dye my hair red, and I wanted to be Mr. Insanity right out of the get-go. And the red hair dye dyed my hair pink, so I had pink hair for my first match.
Excellent. And I guess that leads me to my next question. What led you to choosing the name Mr. Insanity?
I always thought I was a little bit of a crazy character in school, and always trying to be like the class clown when I was in school. And I thought, if I'm going to do this wrestling thing, I'm going to be a different kind of character and be kind of crazy, kind of zany. And I already had the character picked out before I knew how I was going to act. And my trainer, Kid Collins, had told me, well, it doesn't, because I told him my idea for a character, and he said, well, we'll see. We'll see once you get trained and get you on a show. We'll see. And then after I had trained, he said, yeah, you're right. You're Mr. Insanity. So I fit the gimmick after I got trained and I was ready.
Really, really cool. So I noticed very early in your career, you worked with Mad Man Pondo in July and August of 1999. But also, from my research, your last in-ring performance to date was against Pondo for A2W on October 15th, I believe. I'll ask you about your in-ring future later, but what's it like being working with Madman Pondo for all these years?
Yeah, he's probably one of the guys I've worked globally the most places. I've worked him in Tokyo, Japan, and Louisville, Kentucky, and West Virginia, and Delaware on the East Coast for CZW. So our feud has taken us from IWA Mid South to CZW to BJW, Big Japan Pro Wrestling. So yeah, all over the US and all over the world, really. Me and Pondo have wrestled each other, and I love him, but I don't mind punching him.
Excellent stuff. And another interesting I found was that you made your IWA Mid South debut, if my research is once again correct, on October 21st, 2000 against Brain Damage on their King of the Deathmatch show. You're not a part of the tournament though, but how did you find your first experience there at Mid South?
We were late getting there. We had taken a flight from somewhere. We flew in maybe to Cincinnati, I want to say. I forget which airport we flew into, but my luggage was missing, my wrestling gear. So we went to the wrestling show for Ian, and I didn't have my gear, and we arrived late because of our flight. So he said, you stay just in town tonight, and I'll use you on night 2. So we didn't get to be in the tournament like originally planned, but he put us on night 2 in a non-deathmatch tournament match. And I think it was a death match, that Brain Damage, and I think it was a death match. But yeah, it was the non-tournament match.
Right. And would you say that, for your debut there, that you two made a good impression?
I think so. I think we did. I think Brain Damage won that match with a power bomb.
Right. Very cool. And I noticed
Brain Damage was something else. I wish he was still around to be able to tell you and talk to you guys himself. I really wish he was. He was something else. He lived about 10 minutes from me. We rode to many shows together over the years. We wrestled for the same promotions. I trained him, and he was something else. He was such a nice guy.
Oh, thanks for sharing that, and may he rest in peace. Another important, I guess, moment, I would say, in your career, 31st of August 2002. I'm talking about being at Rack's Bar and Billiards in Dover, Delaware for the first Tournament of Death, where you worked with Nick Gage in a barbed wire boards and wooden strips with nails match. For you, how important of a show do you think this is to the history of deathmatch wrestling, considering the fame of Tournament of Death? And tell me your memories of that night.
We were kind of the outsiders. Necro Butcher, Homeless Jimmy, and myself. I think we were the outsiders. I know Homeless Jimmy, I don't know if we rode with Necro to that show. Sometimes we would pick Necro up and go to CZW, but I think that particular show, it was Homeless Jimmy and myself that traveled together. But yeah, we were the outside crew. Mike Burns of Smart Mark Video actually recommended us to that promotion. So I can thank Mike Burns for getting me out there. But yeah, I always throw that out as a trivia question to deathmatch fans: is who was Nick Gage's first opponent at Tournament of Death ever? And it was me.
Awesome. And
it was a good match. That was the first time I had ever wrestled Nick Gage, and I thought it was a good match.
That's cool. On that day, would you even think that this tournament's going to go for 20 years? Was anyone thinking that this is like kind of a big deal, this tournament?
It did feel special. It really did. It felt like they had a good group of guys there. Wife Beater and Nick Gage and Mondo, Nate Hatred, Justice Payne. It seemed like the crew that they had there were a good solid group of guys. And Zandig was, of course, there. It seemed like they had their stuff together. So we're always hopeful that we're a part of something special when we do it in the moment, so it definitely felt special while we were there doing it. Crowd seemed to enjoy it, and all the wrestlers seemed to put their best effort into it. Next weekend, off topic and besides the point, but I don't know if you know this or not, but the next weekend it was Butler, Pennsylvania. I wrestled Maniac Matt Bourne. You remember Matt Bourne?
Doink.
Yeah, he was a character on this show he was trying a new character called the Boogeyman. And he had a long wig that was in his eyes, and he had a camouflage jumpsuit on, and he looked awfully wild in it. But I don't think he could see very well because of this massive wig in his face. And he hung me with an electric cord. He threw me over the top rope during the match, and the electric cord was too tight. And Sabu was supposed to come out and save me while the attack was going on. And all I remember is I go over the top rope and I'm trying to get the cord, and it was so tight I couldn't get my hands around it because of how tight it was. And I heard Sabu's music, and then it was all dark. I woke up, they said I was out for 8 minutes. I woke up on the gym floor. When I woke up and opened my eyes and looked around, there were cops and paramedics all around me, and the gym was completely quiet. And they had a stretcher, and they were trying to explain to me what happened. And I kept asking them, did I break my neck? I didn't know where I was at. I was looking around. I said, did I break my neck? And they said, no, you got hung. We're going to put you on this stretcher. And I looked, and I seen kids crying in the audience. And I said, no, I got to stand up and walk to the back. There's kids. So they stood me up, and I walked to the back, and the crowd cheered when I stood up. But when I got in the locker room, I looked in the mirror, and I was able to wipe blood out of my eyes, and it was on my fingers from the blood vessels or whatever, microhemorrhaging they called it. And I had a scar around my neck for many months, a red line all the way around my neck, and my face was a different shade, a different color. And I guess it was pretty close to doing me in. So I always call that the night of the Boogeyman. It was about a week after the Tournament of Death.
One of the most intense stories I think I've ever had on this show. And I've had
Matt
nearly 150 guests.
Matt Bourne told me, he said, "You should have grabbed the cord, kid." Yeah, I should have. I tried.
Good advice from the guy on the other end of the court, I suppose. Um, so I wanted to ask a little bit about some general stuff about deathmatch tournaments, because it's a kind of a different day than the usual. Is there an atmosphere in the air that is different from the usual? And what do you do to mentally and physically prepare for a day like that?
Well, most of the time it was long travel, whether we were flying in or driving for a long distance. Usually had shows the day before. Usually we were tired, grumpy, sore. Usually always ended up being in the same situation going into those matches because they were awfully far distance. I really didn't have any certain routine or any certain stretching and stuff like that. Back in the day, I would maybe smoke weed or something to relax beforehand. I don't know. There wasn't really any certain routine or any kind of ritual or anything. Usually I was just very tired from driving for hours and hours or from flying into wherever the tournament was.
Fair enough. Everyone's different in that way. But how do you, after the fact, how do you personally recover after such an adrenaline fueled day, where you're more likely to have a few aches and pains? Is there anything that you do after something as crazy as a day like this?
For many years, for a good 12 years, and it was during the majority of my deathmatch career, I would heavily self-medicate. I would abuse prescription pain medications or alcohol, or I would get pretty wasted after the events. That was pretty standard, that I would self-medicate and use whatever people would offer me. There was always people partying and doing stuff, so I would always be a part of that.
Right.
I would usually do too much. I didn't know when to stop. I wasn't very good at it, so I would always abuse it and get whether it was ready to pass out or puke or want to fight someone. I was always staying far past when I should have stayed and taken too many, and I was always on the bad end of things.
Right. So I guess, would you say a lot of the time during these days, there are a lot of after parties after these shows?
We would make them, yeah. If there wasn't, we would definitely make them, yeah. The crew of guys that I traveled with, we would usually make our own party if not.
Right, fair enough. I would probably do the same. King of the Deathmatch 2003 from the IWA Arena in Clarksville, Indiana, is the next one I wanted to ask you about. There's an infamous VCR incident when you worked with Necro Butcher. A fan of my show, Christian D'Amico, asks, did you intend to hit Necro that way with the VCR? Was he okay? And did you feel bad about it?
I don't know. It just it was one of those things. I was in the heat of the moment. I looked and there's a VCR laying in the ring, and he'd taken some pretty serious shots at me in that match and got me. My adrenaline was pumping. It was more of a fight than a match. And it seemed to go well at the moment. I seen it, I threw it. And the only thing we really had was a finish in mind for that match. We had our finish in mind. But up to that point, from getting from point A to the end, it was on us and whatever we wanted to do, and it was just on the fly, really. And I seen that there was a fans bring their weapons match, so we had all kinds of interesting weapons to choose from. And I seen it, I just grabbed it, I threw it. Looking back, it was pretty serious shot I gave him. I didn't in the moment I didn't realize, but I tried to hit him as best as I could with it. I didn't try to hit him dangerously with it, but he said that hurt.
I could tell when you threw it that you probably didn't intend for it to turn on its side. It just so happened to the weight of the VCR must have turned it onto its side as it hit him in the head.
Just wanted to get the yell. I remember yelling, and I remember raising it so high in the air, and like I was trying to be dramatic with it and yell and make it look like I was like that. But the actual impact, I was hoping wasn't too bad. But looking back at it, it caught him pretty good.
Excellent stuff. And I want to ask you another general kind of question about, I guess, your place in the deathmatch scene at the time. Do you think there was a match from your early days that might have been more of like a breakout moment for you where you started to get noticed by a lot of people?
I think the first time at CZW was at ECW Arena. I don't remember what we did first, if we did Tournament of Death first or if we went to the arena. Do you have the dates of the arena between me and Necro against Wife Beater and Mondo?
Let's have a look.
It was at a CZW ECW Arena show. And I know it was in 2002, but I don't know if it was before or after Tournament of Death, because that match, I think, really got us
right. Let's have a look here. 14th of the 9th, 2002. Yourself and Necro against Mondo and Wife Beater. Now, barbed wire board and now stripped death match. 14th.
What was the date on that one?
14th of September. And
oh wow. So I went and did the Tournament of Death first. Then I went and got hung by Matt Bourne the weekend after that. Then the weekend after I got hung, I went to CZW.
At the East W Arena.
I don't, it was all a blur. It was all a blur. I don't remember the time frame on that.
Right.
So the Tournament of Death was only roughly 2 weeks before that match with Wife Beater and Mondo.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess there was a lot of matches in that time period that probably got me noticed. I was doing my thing then, you know. That was, I considered myself one of the main deathmatch guys at that point. So I mean, I was wrestling whoever they fed to me at that point.
Right, cool. And I guess at the time,
come on over for a second. Can I introduce you to somebody?
Of course.
This is my son JC. He's named after JC Bailey. So this is Joseph Carl Klein.
How you going, Joseph? Nice to meet you. My name's Carl as well, so that's pretty cool.
Do you remember seeing matches of JC Bailey? He's pretty crazy, wasn't he? Mm-hmm. Are you as crazy as he is?
That's very cool. Very nice to meet you, JC. So I'm talking to your dad here. And Toby, another question I had. You form an infamous team with Necro known as the Tough Crazy Bastards. You spent a lot of time teaming with him in Mid South and CZW. What are your fondest and wildest memories of these days with Necro?
The trip from we did a match for Hellaware Championship Wrestling in that time period, maybe 2005. We went to Delaware and wrestled. I don't know if I wrestled him. I forget who I wrestled, but it was Deranged and Necro and myself. So probably the road stories, probably traveling with them guys. Especially with traveling with Necro during that time period. We would go all over. Me and Necro would be, after the match with 2003, when me and Necro fought at IWA Mid South, we started doing against each other everywhere. We would be in Detroit one weekend and CZW the next. And I mean, we would go all over, me and him. We would either team or fight each other for a while, for a few years. But I think the road stories, I think traveling with him was some of the some of the memories that I have the most.
Any particular moments in time that or evenings that you can recall that stand out?
Yeah, the Delaware Championship Wrestling. Now, if I say this, you have to maybe plug your ears at some point. All right. I'm telling my son that he may have to plug his ears to this part.
Okay.
Yeah, Necro was in the bed of a truck. It was basically a two-seater truck. I guess we could fit 3 people because we had to in the front seat, but he was in the bed of the truck with the elements, with the night air, and he had a bottle of let me think of what he had. Maker's Mark bourbon, I think was the name of it.
Yeah.
He had it tucked up underneath his arm, and his head was all wrapped because he had bled, and his head had gauze, really big gauze on his head. And he was laying in the bed of the truck. He had an 8-ball in his front pocket, and we had been partying in Delaware, and we had to get back to Ohio, which is a long drive. So me and Deranged were in the front seat of the vehicle, and as we're approaching a bridge, I think we were going into Maryland, and there was a bridge, and it looked like there was a bunch of flashing lights the closer we got. And I said, "Oh no, there's been an accident." And Deranged, as we got closer, Deranged is like, "No, that's a roadside sobriety checkpoint. You might want to turn around." And I said, "If I turn around now, they're going to follow me because they obviously can see me. They're flagging for us to go over in these lanes." So we did. And then the state trooper noticed Necro lying in the bed of the truck. And we would have all gone to jail had they searched the vehicle or searched all of us. I remember I was talking very fast to the officer, explaining that we were pro wrestlers and that we were just trying to get home. And then he seen Necro in the bed of the truck, and he says, "He can't be in here. You got to get him in the front of the truck. That's illegal." So Necro, holding his bourbon, got out of the bed of the truck and got into the front, and the cop was looking at his head, put a flashlight in his face, and he's like, "What happened to you?" Necro said, "It's a long story, man." And then the cop let us keep going. We didn't have to do a check or nothing, a sobriety check, and we just kept right on driving. And we were quiet for some time after that. And then I think it was Deranged. He said, "Did that really just happen?" And I was like, "Yeah, we made it though. We're on the road still."
I love stories like that. That's so cool. It might just be like another night in your life, but to me, like a little story like that really it makes my day. So thank you for sharing. It's time for me to talk about the 19th of November 2005. You win the IWA Mid South King of the Deathmatch, and it's a crazy 2 days for you. And I'm just going to lay this out there for everyone at home who will be watching this. Day 1 is a fans bring the weapons match with Dysfunction and Danny Havoc. In the quarterfinals, against Corporal Robinson in a barbed wire light tube ropes match. The semis with Deranged in another fans bring the weapons, and in the final, you defeat 2 absolute legends, Necro and JC Bailey, in a 200 light tubes match. Please tell me your memories of these wild couple of days.
That was kind of a who's who of deathmatch wrestlers in those 2 days, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So in 2004, I had went to the finals and lost to Corp. And then in 2005, I won. And then in 2006, I went to the finals again and lost to Mitch Page. I think that was his name. Mean Mitch Page. So yeah, so for 3 years in a row, I was in the finals, and I think I was the only one to go to the finals 3 years in a row at that point. I'm sure there's been many that have done it now, but yeah, that particular weekend, that was probably the top that I had as far as the deathmatch success. That was, I believe that was my first deathmatch championship I won, the first tournament I won. But yeah, against those guys, I felt honored that I was able to have that opportunity.
Yeah, it seems like it's kind of like a crowning achievement in that kind of portion of your career. And there's another portion of your career which I'm really excited to learn about. And it happens just before this show where you win the King of the Death match, and it starts around August 2005. Your first Japanese tour for Big Japan. You're over there with your homies MASADA, Tuff Tony, and Mad Man Pondo. You also go back in 2006. How was this experience? And please just tell me if you have any stories of your time in Japan.
I feel like we were there for about 2 months. I feel like it was 60 days, maybe the first time, and 45 days the second time.
Yeah.
It was a good experience. I would have went a third time. I was booked for a third time, but I had got a shoot job at FedEx as a driver for FedEx. And so I couldn't get the time off from work. And that ended up costing me. I couldn't never go back again. They never called again after I turned them down the third time. So sort of wish I would have played it out to see where that would have went had I kept going. Maybe I would have went many times had I kept doing that, you know. I liked everyone over there. I got along with everybody. MASADA was my tag team partner quite a bit on that 2005. That was the first time I had ever met MASADA, and he was my tag team partner over there that first time I went. I thought we had a similar look. I thought we had a good look as a tag team. I think we should have expanded and came back to the States and done it because our look was similar. We both had the braided beard and we both had similar ring gear, and we were the same size roughly. So I think we should have ran with that, but it wasn't meant to be.
Right. But yeah, it's kind of cool, you know, at this point, because a lot of guys that were into this style, obviously, I've had a few guys on the show, and it's a bit of a dream for them to finally go over to Japan and work over
Corrigan
there.
Hall.
Absolutely.
To go to Corrigan Hall.
Yeah. How would you compare, you know, the American deathmatch style to the Japanese deathmatch style?
Well, they want it more crazy over there because I know I was bleeding pretty good after several matches, and Pondo told me, he said, they want more blood. And I'm like, more blood? My back's bleeding, my chest is bleeding, my head is bleeding, my shoulders are bleeding. Where you want more blood from? Yeah, they wanted more over
there. Awesome stuff. The next thing I want to bring up, 30th of July 2005, from the Blue Diamond Park in Newcastle, Delaware. The quarterfinal of Tournament of Death 4. You hit Mad Man Pondo with an insanity driver onto a board of pencils. And Pondo gets stabbed in his biceps by one of the pencils and several more in his butt. Tell me a little bit about this moment.
That was another Fans Bring the Weapons match, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
But yeah, he spotted that and he claimed it for our match. I think there was like a area back in the back where they had all the fans' weapons laid out, and the wrestlers had dibs on, like, okay, which ones do we want for our match? And Pondo wanted that in our match. He made the choice on that one.
Very good.
I was involved in that, but I was just along for the ride, you know.
Absolutely. You also lose to John Zandig in the semifinals in a light tube log cabin match. How did you find working with John?
It was good stuff. He was intense. He was strong. I know he press slammed me. I think he press slammed me off the top rope. I think we were standing on the top rope and he had press slammed me. So, I mean, for standing on something with no balance like that, with the ropes moving the way they do, and he was still able to push me up above his head. And I was a good 265, 270 then. I was pretty good size. So that was pretty impressive. The guy was strong and he was intense.
Very cool.
I always got along good with him. I didn't ever have a problem with him.
That's cool to hear. And usually when I do my research for the show, Toby, I look to see for interesting opponents that you had over the years. And this guy's name popped up and it always stands out to me. You worked with him on the 16th of September 2006 at the Masters of Pain there for IWA East Coast. No ropes, barbed wire, pit of lobsters match. Jun Kasai at the South Charleston Civic Center.
I don't think I worked Jun Kasai when I was in Japan.
Right.
I worked Tony and Pondo and Shadow WX, Abdullah Kobayashi, Sakimoto, MASADA. I don't think I got to work with Jun Kasai while I was in Japan, so I was really looking forward to that one. And I thought there's got to be a little comedy in here because I wasn't scared of falling in a pit of lobsters. That didn't intimidate me at all. So I thought I had to make some comedy spots with it. Have you seen that match? Did you watch the match?
I tried to find it, but I couldn't find it.
Watch that match. At one point, I throw him into the pit of lobsters, and one of the lobsters bit him. So I was trying to congratulate the lobster, and I wanted to shake its hand. And then it snatched me by the hand, so I was dancing around in the ring with the lobster attached to my hand. And then after he had suplexed me on a lobster and crushed it, I was trying to give it mouth to mouth. I was giving it chest compressions, and I was trying to blow in its little mouth, trying to bring it back to life. So I was trying to add a little bit of a comedy to that match, and it seemed to go over well. So I tried to work with what I had. A lot of times you look at these weapons and you're like, what's the most crazy thing I can do? And a lot of times I looked at the weapons and thought, what's the funniest thing I can do with them? Let's bring a little bit of a comedy to it, you know? What would the Three Stooges do if they were in this match?
That's a good way to look at it. Another question that was sent my way from a good fan, Christian D'Amico. He talks about there's some stuff on Nick Mondo's The Trade documentary where Nick mentions that carpet strips are his least favorite and most painful gimmick to use. What would you say is your least favorite weapon to implement in a death match?
Probably the glass, because in fact, 12 years after a glass match, I had this knot on my back and it became like a golf ball size. And then overnight, it became like a softball size. It's a huge bump on my back. You could see it through my shirts. And I went and finally had a doctor look at it, and he sliced it open and he said, there's something in there. And he's like, now there's like an infection in your back. We have to cut you open. And so I had to have my back cut open, and they removed what appeared to be a little tiny piece of debris. And he was guessing it was a little piece of glass, a shrapnel or something. But I'm guessing it was glass because I did a match one time against Corporal Robinson in Detroit, and he gave me the boot camp off the apron onto a table, and I wasn't wearing a shirt, and those pieces of glass were stuck in me. I remember I sat up and looked, and it was bad. I lost a lot of blood. I couldn't believe. There's a picture somewhere floating around where you can see my whole back is blood, and it cut me bad. Well, I think a piece of glass was in my back from then all the way up until 2019, almost 13 years. And it finally had to have surgery on my back because of it. So if I could take glass out of the matches, I wouldn't have used the glass.
Right, fair enough. Because I always found that there is a lot of glass. There's a lot of light tubes, and I've always found it something that I like to bring up with the deathmatch guys is bed sheets. It must be frustrating when it comes to having bed sheets at home and all that, or even just in the hotel room wherever you're staying, and having
a murder scene sometimes.
You must ruin quite a few bed sheets.
Looks like a murder. It looks like somebody got murdered. Imagine the cleaning crew when they come through the hotel after the deathmatch wrestlers stay, and they look in the room after we leave.
Yeah, looks like an absolute crime scene. So over the years, you've worked for John Zandig, you've worked for Ian Rotten, DJ Hyde, Pondo on the East Coast there. What's your opinion of all these guys and working for them? You know, how are they all as promoters?
I've heard people talk crazy talk about all the promoters. I know that I always was paid what was agreed upon. I always got paid what we had talked about, what we had agreed upon, what was agreed upon. I always wrestled who I was supposed to wrestle, and always paid the amount that was told to me ahead of time. So I never carried any grudges towards any promoters or felt like I was stiffed by any of them. I always had what I expected, you know. Maybe some spot shows here, little shows, little promotions I had issues with. Maybe someone tried to short my pay or something, but none of the big promoters ever did. None of the tournaments of death ever paid me any less. None of the King of the Death matches. I always got what I was supposed to get. Always walked away feeling like it was worth the trip and everything that I expected.
Okay, well, that's cool to hear. And after 2011, you seem to pull back a bit on the frequency of your bookings. That's just from my research. I might be wrong. The internet might be wrong. But at that point in time, was there a concerted effort to prolong your time in the business by not having crazy, matches every single week to kind of prolong your time, as everybody has a buck?
I became really unreliable. In 2010, I was fired from my shoot job. I had worked for FedEx for 5 years as a delivery driver, and so I would do these deathmatch tournaments and then come home and deliver FedEx. And I had crashed one of their trucks high on opiate pain pills. I crashed a FedEx truck, and so they fired me. And I became unreliable. I think there were times that I asked for more money or didn't show on time. And so I think there were times I probably didn't show at all. So my wrestling career probably was, I self-sabotaged. I was creating issues it was my fault. So late 2012, October 2012, brain damage died. And by that point, I was probably at the rock bottom of my addiction. I was spiraling down quickly. I would have probably been the next to die had I not got sober then. So yeah, I think once I got sober, February 4th, 2013, since that day, no pain pills, no Tylenol, no cold medicine, no Advil, no alcohol, no flu shots, no medicine over the counter, no marijuana, nothing since that day. So I think if not, I would have died had I not changed the way I was living. And in the process, I walked away from wrestling, and it was several months before I finally took another booking. It was very late in 2013 before I wrestled again. And I was just I picked and choose what I did. And if I didn't think I should do something, I didn't do it. And I was very safe after that point as far as how I did things and what I did. But I had to, because for me, my self-destructive way, I wouldn't have been here today had I done it differently, you know.
Wow, thanks for sharing that with me.
I had to do it the way I did it, or I would have died.
Right. Did you go cold turkey, or was this just like you slowly but surely weaned yourself off this kind of stuff?
I went to a doctor and did medically assisted treatment, and it's Suboxone was what I was on for a year. And so once I weaned off of the Suboxone, then it was nothing. But yeah, I'm an advocate now. I'm a drug and alcohol counselor now, my regular job. And I'm an advocate for medically assisted treatment because I know how I did it and it worked for me. So if someone does it serious and takes it serious, they can get sober that way. And so I'm an advocate for it. I always help direct people that way if that's the way they want to go. But yeah, I I think medically assisted treatment saved my life. And then also I did counseling. And after 2 years of seeing a counselor for drug and alcohol addiction, the counselor said, you maybe want to consider becoming a counselor now because you seem to really, you seem invested in this and you seem like it's the direction you're going. And so I did. I went to school for it and I ended up becoming a counselor. And it just played out the way it was supposed to play out. I think I wouldn't change anything if I had to go back. Maybe some of the criminal activity I was a part of, but I mean, other than that, I think things played out the way it did because it became a purpose, and I lived a story, and I was able to try to help others because of it.
That is very awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Because anytime somebody shares something like that, it's always possible that it's going to help someone if they're going through that problem as well. So I appreciate it. I've only got a few more questions here, Toby. And I thank you so much for your time. I know that there's so much more that we could have talked about, but it would be cool if one day I could get you back on for maybe a second interview. But anyway, you worked Gathering of the Juggalos and Bloody Mania a few times. How did you like working for the Insane Clown Posse? And do you have any stories of working for JCW?
I always felt like it was I think 2001 or 2 in Chicago. Gathering of the Juggalos 2000, I think it was 2001. I did 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, maybe 6. I did 5 or 6 years straight, and then took a break for a while, and then did maybe 2009 or 2010 for them again, and then a very long break, and then recently did 2021.
All right,
but
cool.
yeah, I didn't. Other than scaring one of the kids, one of the clowns had, I think it was Violent J. His son was, yeah, Violent J. His son walked Corporal Robinson to the ring, and I forget exactly how that went. 2010 maybe. Yeah, but I maybe scared the kid a little bit. I came at him or charged at him or something, and I think I made him upset when I did that, but it's all foggy. I don't remember the whole situation. I remember I scared the child.
It's a great quote.
But yeah, I thought the fans were those fans are something else. The Juggalo fans are something else. They have their gimmick. They ran with it and they made money at it, and they have a lot of followers. So, I mean, they found their gimmick, and there was a lot of people that enjoy it. So,
but do you wrestle there during the days where the fans would consistently throw the bottles of Faygo into the ring while you're trying to wrestle?
I think there was other things thrown too, batteries and coins. I think I remember things hitting me that were more serious than Faygo bottles.
Awesome stuff. Another question.
What it does. That means you're doing your job. If people are throwing stuff at you, you're doing your job.
Yeah, good point. So one thing I did want to bring up was 2009 you did do the Tournament of Death 8 when you worked with Wax. But then it's quite some time until you work a Tournament of Death again. It was Tournament of Death 17 with Matt Tremont, Jeff Cannonball in another Fans Bring the Weapons match. So
was that a 10-year? Was there a 10-year gap? Was that exactly 10 years? I think.
So it was 2009, and then the 17 was in 2018. So pretty close to 10 years. But
now I had gone in 2012. I did go out November of 2012. I wrestled for CZW, but it was non-deathmatch tournament.
Right. So was it cool to get back out there for one of these tournaments? One of the prestigious tournaments after so long away from it.
I realized how much more it hurt then. I wasn't numb to everything that time around, so I had to be very careful about what I did. I felt very old.
Excellent stuff. And as I mentioned right near the beginning of the interview, Toby, there was a match that you had in October of this year against Pondo. I believe it was this year. Get my
Yes.
yes.
We're addicted to wrestling.
Right. Cool. So so that's cool to see. So how did that go? And if you could let me and everyone out there that eventually sees this interview know what your future looks like in pro wrestling.
Well, my future in pro wrestling will definitely probably be a limited role in Addicted to Wrestling, a promotion that I helped start from the ground with Deranged and Ian Decay. The three of us have kind of created this new promotion, A2W, Addicted to Wrestling. And that was our debut show in October. And our next show will be January 22nd in Mount Vernon, Ohio, will be show number 2. But I think my ring wrestling days are limited. I think at this point, I'd like to say I'm done and maybe look at starting a group of wrestlers as sort of the figurehead or a manager type role for a group of wrestlers. I think that might be where I'm headed. The match with Pondo was, it was kind of a match. The Hot Tags group from GCW from Atlantic City area, they came out. We did a hot wing eating challenge at intermission, and Pondo came to the ring and blinded me with hot sauce. And so medical personnel had to treat me, and I missed the match. So he was wrestling a local wrestler in my place. But during the match, I, against doctor's orders, came to the ring and attacked Pondo, and we fought for a moment. But yeah, I had limited action that night. I had been blinded by hot sauce. So, but yeah, I think from here on out, maybe I need to look at backstage running the promotion, and also if I'm going to be an on-air character, maybe a manager type. Have a group of guys that I can sort of lead, some young guys, and sort of show them what's up.
Oh, that's cool to hear. Yep. So in my research, I wasn't aware that that A2W was actually something that you've been working on. So best of luck with that. And if for anyone out there, if there's anything that you'd like to plug about the company, please, the floor is yours.
Addicted to Wrestling. It's going to be Sunday, January 22nd in Mount Vernon, Ohio at the Moose Lodge. That's show number 2. Our first show was a success. It was in Bucyrus, Ohio at the fairgrounds. And I think we'll run in the fairgrounds again next year. I think we're going to have a couple shows there. So we're looking to run quite a few shows in 2023. The next show, the main event, will be Cash Flow from old IWA Mid South days. Cash Flow is facing legendary Larry D in the main event. We have Hoodfoot on the show. On our first show, we had some guys from Detroit. Truth Martini came and did commentary. The DBA from Detroit was there. Josh Crane works for us. Name me someone else, Jay. Who else we got?
A boy? Or
wrestlers. Oh yeah, Randy West.
Yeah, Randy West.
Who else we got?
Texas
Pondo.
Mascara.
Texas Mascara. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, any social media links and all that, I will put in the description on YouTube when this interview goes out, so people can find A2W. So the last question I had before our final segment, where I find out about your favorite things, Toby, is how was your Deathmatch Hall of Fame induction for you? Yeah, it must have been a pretty cool little moment there that you had.
I was happy to be a part of that. That was the first time out to Atlantic City for me. Of all the traveling, I had never been to Atlantic City before. So that was pretty neat. They treated me pretty good. I really appreciated that. To be in the GCW Hall of Fame and never have wrestled for GCW, I like that. That was a bonus.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Well, awesome, Toby. Again, thank you so much for your time. And it's time to get to the final segment here on the show. The first question here is, who is your favorite professional wrestler of all time?
Before I became a wrestler, Hulk
Yeah,
Hogan.
very
After I
cool.
became a wrestler, William Regal.
Nice. Do you have a favorite opponent that you had over the years?
Man, I would say there's different styles of wrestling and different opponents. Brain Damage obviously has a close. Obviously, Brain Damage would be one of them. Pondo, obviously one of them. Necro. I don't know. It's hard to narrow down to just one. It really is.
That's okay, no problem. You named some pretty good names there. The last one about wrestling in this segment. If there's one match you look back on that you be your favorite one that you ever performed in, what would you pinpoint that as?
I guess for being at Corrigan Hall for the first time, me and MASADA versus Pondo and Tony. Again, just like a favorite opponent, that's hard. At the Canton Civic Center in 2005, I wrestled Abdullah the Butcher. So that was a big moment for me because I had grown up watching him and Bruiser Brody, and that was a really surreal moment for me. I wrestled in Cleveland one time for a promoter that used to run Cleveland, JT Lightning. He had the belt on me. I was the champ for him. And my opponent, it was a three-way match. It was myself versus Christopher Daniels and Jerry Lynn. Three-way. And not a death match. That was a fast-paced match. And I had to really, that tested my ability as a wrestler. So me and Necro wrestled Chris Hero and Cesaro one time. That was and then me and Necro wrestled Loki and Homicide one time. So it's so hard to place just one. There's so many different matches that covered so many different areas of deathmatch, regular wrestling. Just, I mean, I can't do it. I wouldn't be able to pinpoint just one.
That's okay. So that one's always a difficult question on the show. We're getting away from wrestling now. Toby, do you have a favorite book?
I don't know about that one. Nothing's popping out as a favorite. I've read throughout my life, I've read different books, whether I was forced to read them or read them on my own free will. But yeah, I don't really have a favorite book, no.
No problem. That's okay. Do you have a favorite TV show of all time?
I like these. I always look forward to the new wrestling shows that are on, like the documentaries, like The Dark Side of the Ring or the Tales from the Territories. I like watching stuff like that. Being that I'm a drug and alcohol counselor, I like watching the TV show Intervention.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Some good choices there. Do you have a favorite film?
Let me go back to the book thing.
Oh,
I'm
sure.
Mr. Insanity. I'm Mr. Insanity. I can't read. So if it's a picture book, I can point it to pictures.
Do you have a favorite film of all time, Toby? Oh no, they're tough ones.
Yeah. Lamberto Bava's Demons.
Very nice. Favorite musical artist or band?
For a long time, it was Pink Floyd. But it's been a really long time since I've listened to Pink Floyd. I listened to a lot of Johnny Cash, Tool, or A Perfect
Nice.
Circle, or Pussifer, one of the groups that Maynard does. I don't know. I listen to a wide variety of music.
No, I think you got quite the nice taste there. I'm a big fan of Johnny Cash myself. Moving away from the arts now, Toby, do you have a favorite food?
Steak or sushi?
Very nice. Two very popular answers on the show. Do you have a favorite place to eat on the road?
My wife and I go to this place the next town over from here. It's called The Vault, and they have bands come and play, and they have good food. If I'm out of town, I mean, I'm not picky. I eat anything and everything. I'm not very picky on food. I'll eat whatever everyone else wants to eat, I'll go eat.
Very good. When you're thirsty, do you have a favorite beverage that you go to?
Every morning I gotta start, and it's a bad habit. I should probably stop. But every morning I start with an energy drink. I used to do the Monster energy drinks. Now I'm drinking Bang sweet tea. So there's a Bang energy, and they make a sweet tea. Sometimes coffee, but
Yeah. Good choices anyway. I mean, I like an energy drink myself. The second last one here on the show, Toby, is the question is favorite female body part. So you see a good looking lady, where will Toby Klein's eyes go to first?
my son covered his ears. Well, I don't know if she can hear me or not. She's in the next room, but probably my favorite female body part would be, is my wife as a whole allowed? Can I say her as a whole?
Sure.
Probably your mother. Probably your mother. Yeah.
Very good. That's a smart answer. And the last question here, Toby. Your son might need to put his ears, hands over his ears again, but it's favorite curse word.
I really don't say them too much anymore.
Really?
Yeah. Other than when one of the dogs messes on the floor, he said, yeah, that makes me say a bad word. Man, I don't say any of them with enough regularity anymore. I guess, man, I don't know how to answer that because it's so few and far between that I drop a bad word now.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that, Toby.
I guess I don't have a favorite one. I guess I gotta say there is no favorite one now.
Not a problem, Toby. Well, that brings us to the end of the segment there. And again, I want to thank you so much for your time on the show. My face is hurting from laughing. So you've been a tremendous guest. Again, appreciate your time. And I just, again, all the way from over here, the most isolated city in the world, Perth, Western Australia. You got a big fan of me and a whole bunch of my friends as well. So I just always like to let people know that they've reached so far to the most isolated city in the world. And they got some.
You know who my favorite UFC fighter is of all time?
Who's that?
The Super Samoan.
Who's the Super Samoan? It's Mark Hunt. Is that his? I didn't know that was his nickname, but yeah, I just watched a documentary about Mark Hunt.
He's from over there near you.
Yeah, I think he's over from the East Coast. But yes, Definitely a legend over here, that's for sure.
I love him. I love every one of his fights. I love hearing his interviews. I think a lot of the guy.
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a documentary that I just saw about him that's just an amazing story.
What do you know the name? I'll look for it.
I'll seek it out now. Mark Hunt documentary. It's called Mark Hunt, The Fight of His Life. So I'll send you a message on Messenger after this as well, just so you don't forget. But again, Toby, thank you so much for your time, sir. Yeah, I really have appreciated your time.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. And thank all of you out there for joining us here on the Insider's Edge podcast here on the WZWA Network. I'm Karlifornia. This is my new friend, Mr. Insanity, Toby Klein, and we will see you down the road. Thank you.